Welcome to the CDA Institute's Expert Series. I'm your host, Josh Mall, and today I'll be speaking with Katsiaryna Shmatsina. Katsiaryna is a Belarusian political analyst focusing on Belarusian foreign policy. We spoke about the ongoing migrant crisis that has been manufactured by Lukashenko on the Polish and Lithuanian borders, how this impacts EU security, as well as the relationship between Russia and Belarus, and how Russia stands to gain from this latest crisis. Here is an excerpt from our discussion. Belarus is isolated, but it does have an ally in Russia. Can you discuss the Union State and how integrated are Belarus and Russia? What role, if any, has Russia played in this crisis?
The Union State is a project to something concluded back in 1999 with then President Lukashenko and then Russian President Yeltsin. And the rationale behind it was essentially for Lukashenko to back in the 90s to show the loyalty to Russia in comparison with other post-Soviet countries that shifted away from then Soviet Union and then Russia. In exchange, again, like to show loyalty in exchange for some political and economic benefits. And then over the course of past 20, like roughly 20 years, there were some attempts maybe to proceed with further integration, but mostly these efforts or maybe the talks about actual integration were sort of undermined, especially by Belarusian party, because that's Belarusian counterpart, because that's not in Belarus' interest to lose some part of sovereignty and potentially transfer to some supranational institutions. There were some attempts in 2000s to introduce a Union State currency. And of course, again, like it didn't play to the Belarus favor. Lukashenko was pushing away from this agreement. And essentially, the Union State has a very vague framework with very few sort of agreements implemented. And one of the few actually functioning agreements is something that provides sort of equal rights for employment or more sort of easy access to the labor market of the citizens of the both countries. But that's pretty much it. And it existed on paper till 2000, mostly on paper till 2019, when Medvedev suggested that we should move forward with the integration. And then back then, there was a lot of attention from, let's say, mostly like foreign think tankers who claim that this is the way that Russia wants to solve, or let's say Kremlin wants to solve the Putin 2024 presidency problem. And something that I've heard from, let's say, sources close to Kremlin is that this option was maybe not the main one among the Kremlin calculations, but there were actual like money and resources to brainstorm on this option and how feasible it is for Putin to sort of to chair the Union State instead of, let's say, conducting the constitutional reform in Russia, something that he finally resorted to. And then there were a lot of vague talks for the past few years about what is the actual content, about the several like 24 of roadmaps on integration in various spheres. Again, lots of speculation. Will Belarus sort of lose its sovereignty when those agreements are signed? And they were finally signed. They're called Union State programs, I believe, right now. And what we saw, what was presented to the public was very vague. It essentially doesn't say anything about the content. And it just makes us sort of conclude that once again it will depend on the actual implementation, how far you would go on this sort of vague formulations of cooperation and security sphere, for instance. And in the current crisis, in the political crisis, we can conclude that the survival of Lukashenko largely depends on Putin's support, the way Moscow sort of publicly provides reassurances on, let's say, international arena, saying that they support Lukashenko, and also they show some sort of like cooperation of intelligence services and provide economic support to the survival of the regime.